When you hear about a massive new law aimed at corporate giants, your first thought is probably, oh great, the little guys are going to get crushed, right? But what if that law was actually designed to be their biggest shield? Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today with a major new piece of European legislation. It's called the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. Yeah, it's a mouthful, so we'll just call it the CSDD. And look, on the surface, it's all about making huge companies accountable for their impact on the environment and human rights. But the real story, the one we're going to unpack here, is the surprisingly powerful defense it builds in for their smaller business partners.
Okay, so to really get this ripple effect, we first have to talk about the giants making the splash. Because this law isn't for just any company. No, its targets are very specific.
So yeah, we're not talking about your local coffee shop or that family-run mechanic down the street. This law is aimed squarely at the titans of industry. But, and this is the part you really need to get, their actions are about to send waves down the entire supply chain, and those waves are going to touch businesses of every single size.
And, well, that ripple effect, it isn't always a gentle little wave. For the thousands upon thousands of smaller companies that partner up with these giants, it creates this brand new kind of pressure. Let's call it the small business squeeze.
So here's how it works. For a huge multinational to follow this new law, they can't just clean up their own house, right? They have to look at their entire chain of activities. And what does that mean? It means they have no choice but to turn to their thousands of smaller suppliers and partners and start asking some tough questions and asking for proof.
And this right here, this is the core of that squeeze. It all comes down to two words: contractual assurances. Now, this isn't some friendly little request over email. Oh, no. This means brand new contracts, new codes of conduct, new demands for proof, all of it getting passed down from the top to their smaller partners.
But this is where the story gets really interesting. The folks who wrote this law, they saw this problem coming a mile away. They knew exactly how much pressure this would create, so they intentionally built in some incredibly powerful, mandatory protections for those smaller businesses. And this quote, it really gets to the heart of it. A massive corporation can't just dump a 500-page rulebook on a small supplier's desk and say, good luck. The demands they make have to be fair, they have to be reasonable, and they have to be proportionate to what that small business can actually handle. You see, it's not about shifting the blame anymore, it's about sharing the responsibility.
And it gets better. The law doesn't just stop at play fair. It actually requires these big companies to actively help their smaller partners comply. We're talking about real, tangible support.
So what does that look like? Well, it means the bigger partner has to give real, practical help. So, think of a giant car company paying for new safety training for one of its small parts suppliers, or a tech behemoth helping a small software partner upgrade their systems. They can't just demand it, they have to actually help them get there. Now, that kind of support is absolutely crucial, but the directive goes even one step further. It creates what is basically a financial safety net for those times when the cost of getting everything up to code is just too much.
And this brings us to probably the single most important question for any small business owner looking at this. What happens if doing all this stuff is going to put me out of business? Well, believe it or not, the directive has a crystal clear answer for that exact situation.
It all comes down to this very specific legal phrase: jeopardize the viability of the SME. That's the trigger. The moment meeting these new standards threatens the actual survival of a small business, the most powerful protections in this whole law kick right in.
And let's be super clear here. We're not talking about, a slight dip in profits for one quarter. The law defines this as a situation that could literally cause the business to go bankrupt or put it on the brink of bankruptcy. This is a shield against an existential threat. So, get this. If complying with the new rules pushes a small business into that financial danger zone, their huge corporate partner is legally obligated to step in and help. We're talking about things like direct financing to pay for upgrades, offering low-interest loans, or even guaranteeing future business to help that small company get its own loan. And I want to stress this isn't a friendly suggestion, it's a hard and fast requirement.
So, when you put it all together, you've got the mandate for fair play, the requirement for actual, tangible support, and this critical financial safety net. Suddenly, the CSDDD starts to look a lot less like a heavy-handed regulation and a lot more like a blueprint for a whole new way of doing business together.
It's a fundamental shift in the power dynamic. Think about the old way. Big companies would just push all the risk and all the costs down onto their smallest, most vulnerable suppliers. But under this CSDD model, the law requires that responsibility and support get shared up the supply chain.
It forces a move away from a simple you sell, I buy relationship to something that's truly collaborative.
What this really does is reframe the whole idea of sustainability in business. It's no longer some impossible test that small businesses have to pass or fail all by themselves. Instead, it becomes a shared journey, where the bigger, more powerful companies have an actual legal duty to help their smaller partners get to the finish line.
So this leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? By actually writing partnership and shared responsibility into law, is the CSDD doing more than just regulating sustainability? Could it be that it's fundamentally redesigning how global supply chains work and changing the power dynamics for good?